Good day, adventurers. Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite card games ever, Magic the Gathering. Specifically, I'm just going to talk about one of my favorite decks. It is a Commander deck, so if you know about Magic the Gathering, there is a format in there called Commander. Commander is a format in which you have one particular card that your entire deck is based off of its colors, identity, based off of its abilities, and themed off of it in some form, some way. And so I thought I would start off by sharing probably my most favorite Commander deck I've ever built. And this is going to say a lot about me because people like to say that people's favorite Commander decks say a lot about the person and who they are. So if you're curious on who I am and what I'm like, this is about to reveal a lot of information for people that believe that. And so I want to talk about a deck based off of a commander called AC Tyrant of the Gyre's Strait. He is a really cool blue-green commander. I am a massive fan of the color combination blue-green. I'm a massive fan of just the actual color combination. I like blue and green. They're my two favorite colors, so I think it just fits perfectly that also my favorite Magic the Gathering color combination happens to also be blue-green. Which is saying something because I'll be honest, I'm not really a big blue fan when it comes to Magic, or at least I'm not a big fan of the majority of what blue does. I think the one thing I like the most about blue is that it draws cards, which every color can do just a little bit, but blue does it really well, and I like drawing cards. I like defying the rules of Magic, and I also like another mechanic that I like in blue is copying things. Especially in Commander, because in Commander you're limited to one of a card. That's another rule to its limitation is that you can only have one of a particular card. Normally in Magic the Gathering you can have as much as 4 of a card in your deck, but in Commander you can only have 1 of a card in your deck. And being able to copy something is breaking the rules in a way because you're allowed to get a second of a card. And I love doing it. I love breaking the rules legally, and I like being able to draw more than one card a turn. Being able to play more than one of a creature is huge to me, and I love doing that stuff, and I'm a big fan. Without further ado, though, I think we should get into it. I'm going to talk about my deck a little bit of what it's supposed to do. I'm also going to talk about each individual card, why I chose it, why I put it in, because this is actually based off of a deck I own in real life. And so all the cards are based off of the exact cards that I own in real life. They are, and there's a reason why I got them and so on and so forth. And I'll explain all that in a little bit. So let's get into it, shall we? Let's make big me disappear, little me reappear, and let's bring up the document, or should I say the website. I use Archidec. So if you're looking for a good website to build your decks on, I'm a huge fan of Archidec because it works with Scryfall, and I use Scryfall a lot. And so we are going to look at this a little closer now. Now here it is. Here's the commander. View card details. AC Tyrant of the Gyre's Strait. He is 4, a green and a blue. He is a 5/5 serpent that says you may play an additional land on each of your turns, and whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. Immediately right off the bat, just like I said, we're breaking 2 rules. Normally in Commander you can only play 1 land a turn. Well, now I'm able to play 2, and normally you're only allowed to draw 1 card a turn, and now I'm able to draw 2. We are essentially breaking the rules all around with this guy, and I love it. I love breaking the rules, and that is something that we are going to do a lot. So we're going to start off with my smallest category first, which is Planeswalkers. I have 1 Planeswalker in the entire deck, and that is Mu Yanling. Mu Yanling is a 4/2 blue. She is 5 loyalty counters that she comes in with. She has a +2 ability, target creature can't be blocked this turn. -3 ability, draw 2 cards. And -10 ability, tap all creatures your opponents control. You take an extra turn after this one. I'll be honest, I have never once in my life gotten that -10 off, and I don't think I will ever get that -10 off. I think things have to go extremely wrong for me to have gotten this -10 ability to go off. But yeah, From here on out, I'm just going to assume that you understand what Magic the Gathering is when I talk about these cards, because if I need to explain everything as if you don't understand, like what you don't understand how a Planeswalker works and stuff like that, this video is going to be insanely long. So if you don't understand how Magic the Gathering works, I recommend Googling up how the game works, going down to your local card shop, maybe learning how to play from the people down there. It's a really fun game. I definitely recommend it. But for now, for the rest of this video, I'm going to assume that you know how the game works. So I hope you do. If you don't, and you just like the sound of my voice, well, congratulations. You're going to hear it for a while now. But yeah, Mu Yangling. I have Mu Yangling in here for mainly one ability. And that's the fact that she can constantly give something unblockable while making herself harder to kill. Her +2 ability is target creature cannot be blocked this turn, and how I use that is I usually use that on either AC Tyrant of the Gyre straight to get commander damage through and win with commander damage, or I use it on one of my bigger hitters just to finish somebody off. I think I've used it maybe a couple times to draw cards, but it wasn't as important. I mostly use it for the unblockable. Next, we're going to go to my next smallest category, which is a tie between instances and artifacts, and I think artifacts are going to be a little bit more interesting, so let's go to artifacts. We have the Black Blade Reforged. Black Blade Reforged is +1/+1 for each land you control. As you can see from the commander, we're already going to be playing additional lands, so we're going to have a lot of lands. He's not the only thing in this deck that's going to give us a lot of lands. And so this is one of the ways that I make AC Tyrant of the Gyre straight kill somebody with commander damage, is because I equipped him with this blade, I make him unblockable, I swing, and I kill him. And it's just one good way to get rid of a player. Otherwise, I just equipped it to another creature, and I just have a really big creature to swing around. Next is Conduit of Worlds. Conduit of Worlds is that you may play lands from your graveyard. I have a lot of fetch lands in this deck. And so being able to reuse a fetch land on my turn when I'm out of lands, because with AC Tyrant of the Gyre Strain, I run 35 lands, which is a decent amount of lands. It's not a whole lot of lands, but you want to be able to keep playing lands so that way you can keep drawing cards, and nothing draws you more cards than being able to play a land that then fetches for another land, because play a land, draw a card, fetches for another land, draw another card is a huge deal, and being able to constantly play them from your graveyard over and over and over again without actually having to have lands in hand is even better. But also Conduit of Worlds comes with the ability to play something, a permanent from your graveyard, as long as you don't cast anything else that turn, which is really good for if I need a game changer back. Essentially, if one of these big important creatures that I play with end up going away, or maybe someone destroys the Black Blade Reforged and I think I can kill somebody that way, here is how I get it back. I use Conduit of Worlds to get it back, and it's pretty much the only graveyard recursion I have in the entire deck. Decanter of Endless Water is in here for the exact same reason as Thought Vessel, and that is that they pretty much both allow me no maximum hand size. Again, I like breaking the rules in Commander, and it would play additional lands, draw additional cards, not have to discard when my hand gets too big, breaking all the rules. And that's what I love to do. And now I will admit this does slow my gameplay down a little bit because I end up with a lot of options. But I try my hardest on my opponent's turns to be thinking about my options while also looking at what they're doing. Luckily, there's usually one player in every game that's doing absolutely nothing and is also taking a long time to do that nothing. And that gives me just enough time to learn what I'm doing. Next is the Great Henge. Great Henge was a big money hit for me. But I played down at my local game store for prizes, and one of the prizes is $10 credit. And I ended up building up enough $10 credit. I turned enough $5 entry fees into $10 credits that I ended up buying the Great Henge from him. And so the Great Henge is a really cool spell. It's for 7 and 2 green, in which it costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. And right now, the way that I play this deck, I'm guaranteed 5 to be off that, making this a 4-cost artifact at the very least. Because my commander is going to be in play one way or another. And then it can tap to add 2 green to gain 2 life. I really don't need it for that mana. For that life gain, though, that's a pretty big deal. And then what is really important is that whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on it and draw a card. one way to get my creatures big. Now I do a lot of creatures. You can see here I got 30 creatures, and each one coming in is just a little bit bigger, but each one coming in and drawing me a card. That means I'm drawing a card off of all 35 lands, and I'm drawing a card off of all 30 creatures, meaning I'm drawing a card off of 65 cards out of my 100 card deck, which is a huge deal. It means that I'm gonna draw throughout my entire deck. Now, I rarely do that. I used to do that when I thought a combo worked a certain way, but after I figured out how that combo actually works, I no longer draw through my deck as much. So I used to have Laboratory Maniac and the Jason here that made it so that way I won when I drew the last card of my deck. I no longer have those in here because they don't. I don't draw through my deck as much as people think. I get really close a lot. So mill is arguably a good way to take me out, but I have added some precautions to mill. And then Thought Vessel, like I said, Thought Vessel's in here the same reason that I just took Canter of Endless Waters in here, and that is no maximum hand size. Next is going to be instances. I'm going to start off right back saying that Counterspell is in here, and it's the only Counterspell in the entire deck. I am running blue, 1 Counterspell. The reason why I'm running 1 Counterspell in blue is because I, for one, do not have the mindset for counterspelling. I am not good with counterspelling. I'm not good at holding. I'm not good at not using mana so that way I can stop somebody from doing something else that might be good for their play. I don't like that mentality of I'm just going to spend my turn stopping you from doing what you're doing, because what I do apparently is not important anymore. I don't like counterspelling, and so I have 1 counterspell in here for one reason only: to stop board wipes or to stop something that is game ending for me. That is the only reason why I run this counterspell. And so what I do for it is that in this game I'm really good at drawing out a lot of cards. I draw until I find it, and then I clutch it. I hold on to it. I usually get a lot of mana, so I keep 2 mana open for it. And I save it for something that's devastating for me. And sometimes I let my commander die a lot, because it's not as devastating as if a board wipe happened or something like that. And so it's mostly in here as a one-time deterrent. I also have crop rotation. Crop rotation is in here so that way I can search for a non-basic land. Specifically, there are a few non-basic lands in my deck that are very, very important, and I'll go over that. In fact, since technically lands is not as big as the other categories, I think I'll go over lands next. But I do have some non-basic lands that are very important for me to fetch, and I'm going to go over those in a little bit. Otherwise, crop rotation is just a way for me to get rid of 1 land for a land that's more important. Entis Restoration is a card that allows me to sacrifice 1 land for 2 lands. But if I have a creature with power 4 or greater, which if anything is going right, AC is out and he's got a power of 5, and so I'm going to be searching for 3 lands instead. So I'm getting rid of 1 land for 3 lands, and that's a pretty big deal. And then Harrow and Rolling Growth do the exact same thing as Entis Restoration, except for they only find 2 lands. They do not find 3 if the creature is big. And so these are just ways for me to pop some lands out and empty my deck a little bit more, and also draw more cards, because each one of these cards, Entis Restoration, Harrow, and Regrowth, they're not just find 2 lands in my deck. They are find 2 lands, draw 2 cards. They are a double effect card in my deck, and they're really strong, really good, and I like them. We're going to go over lands now. I run 10 islands and 8 forests. There's a reason why I run more islands than forests, despite the fact that what you guys are seeing here is most of my deck is green. And that is because I have one particular creature in this deck that likes me to have a lot of islands, and it's based off me having a lot of islands. And so yeah. More of the unique cards. Broker's Hideout. These lands where they enter the battlefield and then they immediately sacrifice to fetch for another land. I run all of them. Now this does mean that some of them only find a forest and some of them only find an island, and Broker's Hideout is the only one that allows me to find both, and it's the one land that I'd like to find the most when it comes to fetching lands. Are still really good because they are still essentially 1 land equals 2 guard draw, and that is a pretty big deal. I run Command Tower because who doesn't? Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse are both in here because they fetch, and they fetch for either one. Halimar Depths is in here so that way I can stack my deck a little bit before I draw. Maze of Ith. Here's one of the main lands that I like to fetch out right away because this deck does not do a great job at protecting itself in the early game, despite it having 3 main ways to do it. There are 3 spells in here that are no 4 spells. There's 4 spells in here that are good at, or 3 spells in one land that are good at protecting itself in the early game. Otherwise, it leaves itself wide open because I don't have a lot of low cost creatures and stuff. And Maze of Ith is one of the ways that I protect myself. Maze of Ith allows me to tap it to untap target attacking creature, prevent all damage done to and by it. This turn, this is a really good way. This is what I have a bunch of fetch ways to fetch non-basic lands. Such as the crop rotation, and I will hunt down Maze of Ith pretty much first. Unless I need something else more importantly, Maze of Ith is pretty much the first thing I search for. Memorial to Genius is in here, and I've been thinking about taking it out because it's just in here for this extra draw power when I need it. But I draw so well in this deck, but I don't think I need it anymore. Oran Reef, the Vast Wood, is in here, in which put a +1/+1 counter on each green creature that enters the battlefield this turn. When this deck gets going, it can end up making a crap ton of little green creatures or some big green creatures in a turn, and it's really nice to make them just a little bit bigger than they actually were. And this is a very good land for doing it. I've never had to fetch this land. It's never been important enough to fetch. Another land that I'll fetch, though, Reliquary Tower. Again, no maximum hand size. Being able to find no maximum hand size early on in my game is a really big deal because the less cards I need to discard to the grave, the more options I have through the rest of the game. Rogue's Passage is in here because of the unblockable thing. Being able to swing with one of my big creatures or being able to get through with AC and to do commander damage is a good way to get rid of somebody. Simic Growth Chamber, I do fetch this land sometimes. It is a land that taps for both a blue and a green, except when it enters the battlefield tapped, it returns a land to your hand. Here's the cool thing about this though. With AC, who cares about lands entering the battlefield, if I'm out of lands in hand and I don't have a way to play lands from my graveyard and I have Simic Growth Chamber in hand, I can play Simic Growth Chamber, draw a card, then return the Simic Growth Chamber back to hand, and be able to keep doing that for all my land drops, being able to continuously draw off of playing this one land. So Simic Growth Chamber is a very big important piece to my deck. I also got the Simic Guild Gate because I have the way to search for gates, Terramorphic Expanse, and then last but not least, Yavimaya Cradle of Growth is in here because I run more islands than I do forests, and Yavimaya is a really good way to turn all these, because in my early game, I'm going to be searching out 3 forests is about the most that I need to play any single card in this deck. And so I try to make sure that I at least get to 2, and then I hope for the 3rd. And then I usually do my best to search for islands as much as possible. Islands is what I want the most of because of one particular creature in this deck. And so I get islands as much as possible. And then if I have the option to search out Yavimaya or I find Yavimaya, Yavimaya is a great way to turn my mana into any color that I need, blue or green. And so yeah, that is my lands. Next, we're going to go off of my sorceries. A Circuitous Route, which I have always called it Cirtaceous Route. A friend corrected me one day at a gameplay. He's like, you know it's Circuitous Route, right? And I'm like, no. And I like my way better. Cirtaceous Route sounds more elegant. And I do. I like the name of Cirtaceous Route. So if you guys want a new way to call this card, call it Cirtaceous Route and just watch your friends cringe. But yeah, it allows me to search for 2 lands. One of them can be a gate. So as you saw, I have the 1 gate in here. I'm able to search for that dual land as well as 1 normal land. Cone of Cold is in here as a way for me to get in a win. It allows me to tap all my opponent's creatures, possibly for more than 1 turn. And so it allows me to tap everything down, full swing into an annihilation on everybody. It's really good. It's really powerful. A friend recommended it to me one day. He's like, you know about Cone of Cold? And I'm like, no, what's Cone of Cold do? He's like, you need more ways to be able to win the game than you do to draw lands and stuff like that. And so he recommended Cone of Cold to me. He showed it to me, and I liked it. And it's worked several times. It has backfired on me a couple times when people were able to play cards from my deck, but it's been more beneficial than bad. Cultivate's in here for searching up lands, being able to put a land into play, draw a card, and then put 1 land in my hand to be able to play the draw card. Really good. Curse of Swine is one of my ways to get rid of problematic creatures. Worst comes to worst, I pay 3 mana and get rid of 1 creature, and it turns into just a 1 card removal, but at least it's able to remove multiple creatures if I need it to be. Usually in this deck, I have a bunch of mana in play, so I'm able to almost do a board wipe with it, except it's more like a very specific, useful creature board wipe. And so, in the fact that it exiles is huge. It's not destroy. It's kind of one of the reasons why I like it is because at worst case it is a generous gift that exiles instead of destroys, and at best case scenario it is a multitude of generous gift that exiles, and I like it. I like Curse of Swine. I think it's a great card. All right. Next is Far Wanderings. Far Wanderings is in here because normally I get a bunch of lands into my graveyard, a bunch of fetch lands into my graveyard, and I'm drawing a bunch of cards and so on and so forth. Far Wanderings allows me to search for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, unless I have 7 or more cards in my graveyard, and then I get to search for 3. It's another way to draw a... Worst case scenario, it's 3 mana to draw a card and get a land. Best case scenario, it's 3 mana to draw 3 cards and get 3 lands. Really good. Finale of Devastation is in here because, again, I needed more ways to win the game. A friend told me that I need more ways to win a game, and I was in another town, and I was looking through their I was at the card shop looking through their cards, and I saw Finale of Devastation there, and I thought to myself, well, I can fetch out some very particular creatures from my deck that make it very easy to win, and I'm pretty sure you're guessing which one it is, and you're probably right. It's definitely that one. And we'll get the creatures in a little bit. I'll save creatures for last because creatures are very interesting. And so Finale of Devastation is a great way for me to get one particular creature into play. A couple of choices in here just in case that one creature is no longer available. And then also a way to bump all my creatures that I've been creating all game, because I create a lot of tokens in this deck, which is another rule breaking, having so many creatures. And it's just a great way to win the game. Kodama's Reach is just like Cultivate: 1 land to play, 1 land to hand, 2 play. Nihil's Intervention is a way for me to fetch non-basic lands, allowing me to get not just 1 but multiples. So with this card, I can end up fetching up Yavimaya, Simic, Orin, and Reliquary Tower and Rogue's Passage. I'm able to fetch as many of them as I can, and I can grab them all in one go and then play them all in one go if I have a bunch of land play cards in play. But at the same time, also being able to deal twice X damage to each creature with flying, because I don't have a lot of flying defense. I'll admit I don't use it that much for that, because people don't run flying as much as they should in Commander. I think flying is an underrated ability in Commander. Just people don't run it. Unless people are running an Angel deck or a Kalia deck, they usually aren't running flying, or a Dragon deck, they're not running flying. But just in case I am facing one of those decks, Nihil's Intervention is a great way for me to deal with it. Search for Tomorrow is a perfect early game mana search. It allows me to search for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, untapped, very important. But also the fact that I can suspend it for 1 green mana. It's a great 1-drop and get a land in a couple turns. Sylvan Scrying is another way for me to get a non-basic land into play. It allows me to search for the particular lands that I need, whether it be the Maze of Ith or the Reliquary Tower. And then we have another game winner here, Triumph of the Hordes. Triumph of the Hordes I used to have in my dinosaur deck, but after playing AC so much and being so addicted to playing AC, I decided to take it out because, like I said, AC, people kept on telling me I needed more win cons. I needed more ways to win. Well, what's a better way to win than having to only do 10 damage to each of your opponents and giving all your creatures trample? Pretty big, pretty important. Of course, it is a bit of a dirty card. Again, we're breaking the rules. Only having to do 10 damage instead of 40 is a huge deal. A lot of people hate Infect. I understand it, but at the same time, I love Infect. I started playing around the times of Mirrodin and Innistrad when they first came out, and I just became a huge fan of Infect when it came out, and I was such a huge fan of Infect that right when it was supposed to fall off the block, oh god, remember blocks? I remember blocks. I miss blocks. But yeah, right when it was supposed to fall off the block and no longer be standard legal anymore, I decided to build a new, it was a black-green Infect deck, and I brought it to, and I wasn't the only person that thought about bringing Infect back in the newest stuff of Standard. A lot of people thought Infect was done, and I decided to bring it back, as well as one other person. That other person played blue-green Infect. I played black-green Infect. We even faced off against each other, and I took first place. I managed to beat him. He was really salty about it because he says that my luck was the only reason why I won. Well, luck is part of the game. So yeah, it's part of winning, and just saying that it's just because you're luck because you won is not a very sportsman thing to do. Don't ever do that, guys. And so yeah, I managed to come out in first place with that a couple of times in a couple of tournaments, and all at the tail end of whether or not it was supposed to be legal anymore. And it was a lot of fun. So I'm a big fan of breaking the rules, and in fact is one of those ways to break the rules that I like. Granted, I admit it is a really shitty way to lose. I've lost to Infect. I have a friend that plays an Infect commander deck, and he can win so quickly with it, and it's demotivating. But like, there's a difference between facing Infect from the very, very beginning, knowing you're going to lose, and then having it come out of nowhere as a win con. Having it come out of nowhere as a win con is understandable. The game is over now. But staring down the barrel of Infect the entire game is so stressful and is just not fun. But having it come out of nowhere, just being a shotgun blast, and bam, gone. I just dealt with you. It's so much more. It's more reasonable. Alright, next is enchantments. I don't run a lot, but I do run more than sorceries. Starting off with Abundance. Abundance is, I actually don't run this Abundance. This is probably one of the few cards in here that I didn't choose the actual version that I played. I played the normal looking one. Abundance is a great card in here because Abundance makes it so that way every time I would draw a card, I get to choose whether or not I get to choose land or non-land, and then I reveal cards from the top of my deck until I reveal a land or a non-land, whatever I chose, and that becomes my draw, and the rest of it gets scooped to the bottom. This is an amazing way for me to guarantee that I always have a land to play when I need to play a land, and then draw not a land when I don't want a land. So essentially, if I have 3 lands in play and I have 4 land drops, I can say non-land, non-land, and then on the last one I can say land and get that 4th land drop and say land again to make sure I have a land in hand for next turn. Or I could be desperate and I could have a bunch of land search spells in hand, and I just need to find something to deal with something. I can keep saying non-land, non-land, non-land until I find something to help me out. Bear Umba is in here because we're trying to cheat. I like cheating, and one of the cheaty ways that you can do is to play with a lot of mana. And Bear Umba allows me to, whenever the equipped creature swings, it allows me to untap all my lands, and I get to use all my lands again for the main phase 2, which is a huge deal because with the amount of cards that I'm drawing, I need a lot of mana to keep casting every spell and to get everything onto the field. And so this is one of the ways to do it. But another way that this card cheats is Totem Armor. I love Totem Armor. I would love it if they went back to it and made a few more Totem Armors with unique abilities. And so I like the fact that I usually put this on AC to protect AC or another prime piece on my table to protect it, and it makes it so that way whenever that creature would die, the Totem Armor goes instead, which is board wipe defense, single kill removal defense. It's really good. It's really strong. Case of the Locked House. Case of the Locked House is something that I could easily solve. This is like saying what is 2 + 2 for this deck. 1, you may play an additional land on each of your turns. This is a huge deal. This means I get to draw more cards, I play more lands, I get more lands, I have more mana, I keep more casting, more stuff. To solve this, I must control 7 or more lands. I don't think I've ever gotten this out on turn 4, but almost every time I've gotten this out, it was solved at the end of turn. And then to solve it, you may look at, once this is solved, you may look at the top card of your library anytime, and you may play lands and cast creatures and enchantment spells from the top of your library. Now, that does mean that a whopping 17 cards, 17 plus artifacts, 22. There are 22 out of 100 cards that I can't use this card with, Case of the Locked House. But there is a whopping 72 cards that I can use it with. Which is huge. There's 72 cards that I can cast from the top of my library, or play from the top of my library with Case of the Locked House, which is really important. Now here comes one of my early game defenses, Collective Restraint. And I personally take responsibility for this card jacking up in price because this card when I got it. I found this card. Collective Restraint makes it so that way creatures can't attack you unless they pay X, where X is the number of basic land types you control. I found this card one day, and it was like $2. That's how much it was all across all the markets. Pretty much was $2. And I'm like, this is an insanely good card, because I run Wooburg decks, I run 3-color decks, I run 2-color decks, and this is essentially a propaganda that or a the swords one. This is essentially a propaganda that makes it so that you that costs 1 more mana, which is another card to protect you. And it is a huge deal because you get 1 more. 1 more is a pretty big deal. And when you play this in Wooburg, paying 5 to attack with each of your creatures is insane. Downright insane. And I love this card. So I bought a bunch of them. I think I bought like 5 or 6 of them right then and there, because I had so many decks that could use it for protection. And then like a week, maybe a month later, I looked at the price and it shot all the way up to $10. And I was like, what did I do? Did I steal the market out or something? Was there not enough of these made? What happened? But yeah, Collective Restraint is a great way to protect your deck, and it's one way that I protect this deck. It is essentially propaganda that costs 1 more. Definitely worth it to make my opponents think twice about swinging at me early game. I know it doesn't come out until turn 3 or 4 for me, but it's a must. And another way to protect my field is Dissipation Field. Whenever a permanent deals damage to you, return to its owner's hands. Most case scenarios, people don't like that. There are some rare cases where people are like, I want to attack you now because I get to recast my creature, get its ETB again, something like that. And it's like one person I face has ninjas. He would love to constantly keep swinging at me with this because he keeps ninjutsuing it back in and keep using its ninjutsu ability. And so rare cases, it doesn't work. Most of the time it works because people don't want to lose their tokens that they've made to swing at me. People don't want to lose their creatures or have to recast their big creatures because unlike me, they don't have a crap load of land in play. Next is Colony Heart Expedition, one of my early game ways to get more lands, especially landfall ability, which you're going to see a lot of when we get the creatures. Landfall, whenever a land enters the battlefield, put a quest counter on Colony Heart Expedition. Remove 3 quest counters from Colony Heart Expedition. Search your library for 2 basic land cards. Put them in the play tap. There has been some rare occasions that I play this on turn 2, and turn 3 or 4, I end up having it go off, and I end up with I end up searching for 5 or 6 lands in one turn because this fetched me 2, whatever I just did fetched me 3, and so on and so forth. Because turn 2 it's Calling Heart Expedition, turn 3 it's Cultivate, and then I get to play 2 lands for that turn as well, and it's just it explodes my turn immensely. Next is Ominous Seas. This was another card that was recommended to me by a friend. He saw that I was drawing insanely amounts of cards with this deck, and he thought, you know, you should find a way to ensure yourself with those card draws. And so he's like, Ominous Seas allows you to make a giant Kraken with your card draw. And I'm like, really? Card draw makes me Krakens? That just sounds awesome. And so yeah, whenever I draw a card, put a Foreshadow counter on Ominous Seas, remove 8 Foreshadow counters from Ominous Seas, create an 8/8 blue Kraken creature token. Which in a way, I use this like board wipe defense. And how I use this like board wipe defense is that I build it up, build it up, build it up, build it up, build it up. I keep drawing cards from all my land draws, and I keep building it up until I get 16 counters on it or something like that. And then somebody board wipes, and then after they're done board wiping at their end phase or right before my turn, I remove these counters and I make 2 Krakens on my turn, and now I've got 2 8/8s. Or I wait until someone tries swinging at me and then I make some 8/8s to block. And so this is a really cool card. I like this card, especially if you're drawing a lot. I recommend this in your deck. Next is Propaganda. I've already mentioned it a couple of times. It's just like Collective Restraint. It's 3 mana to make it so that way people have to pay 2 for attacking you. It's one of the few ways in my deck to protect myself in the early game, because as we get the creatures, you'll see I don't have a lot of low-cost creatures. I rely heavily on the fact that turn 4 or 5, I'm sitting on 7 or 8 mana. And so it's a really great way to protect myself. Song of the Dryads. I play this card because one of the people that I play with in my groups, he's a huge ass, and he finds the most ridiculous ways well, screw you over or to deal with your problems. He's the only person I know that can play counter spells in every color because he's found the counter spells in every color and he uses them. And so you could be facing off against a mono white deck, and then all of a sudden here comes a counter spell, and it's just ridiculous, and I hate it. I hate it so much. But he did teach me a few lessons, and one of the lessons he taught me was Song of the Dryads, and he wasn't the only one. I have another player in my party that uses it as well. And they put that on my commander one day, and I was playing a Voltron commander, and I was just like, well, I'm out of the game now because commander damage is how I deal stuff, and I was still getting used to Voltron decks, and I was not used to having backup creatures. I had creatures in the deck, but not backup creatures to use as your Voltron. And so Song of the Dryad shut me down several times. There's a lot of decks, most of my decks rely on my commanders heavily. I play with my commanders heavily, and being able to shut them down with Song of the Dryads is insane. And so I decided Song of the Dryads, a good way to shut down problems. If people use it on me, it's time to make other people learn the lesson too. And so yeah, Song of the Dryads is in here to shut down those decks that need their commanders or one particular card to work really well. Spelunking is in here. Ever since it was made, I saw it, I was like, that's gotta go in AC. It's gotta go in there without a doubt. And so Spelunking makes it so that way when it enters the battlefield, draw a card. You may put a land from your hand into play. So immediately I'm drawing a card, playing a land to draw another card. That's already pretty good for 3 mana. But at the same time, if it's a cave, I gain 4 life. I don't run the caves. But what's most important about this card is that lands you control enter the battlefield untapped. Huge deal. All of my lands now enter the battlefield untapped. So all my lands search that say search for a land, put into play tapped, no longer coming in tapped. I can keep using it for more land searches. But most importantly, Simic Growth Chamber, really cool ability that you can a combo that you can do with this. You play the Growth Chamber, tap it for 2 mana, return the Growth Chamber. Play the Growth Chamber, tap it for 2 mana, return the growth, and you repeat that for as many land plays as you had, and you just made a bunch of mana without, you essentially got the mana from having the land plays without missing your land drops, while being able to keep Simic Growth Chamber in your hand to keep playing it for later date to keep being able to draw cards. Really cool, really powerful, really great ability. Virtue of Strength. Not the only card in here that does this. I have occasionally used it to get a fetch land back to return target creature or land card from your graveyard to your hand. I've occasionally used it to return a fetch land to hand early game. I have never used it to return a creature yet. But what I mostly use this for is, again, I'm fetching out a lot of lands with this deck. I'm getting a lot of lands into play with this deck. And that is that if you tap a basic land for mana, it produces 3 times as much of that mana instead. It's not the only card in here that doubles or triples my mana, but it is a very important one because this one's an enchantment. Enchantments are harder to get rid of than creatures. The other ones are creatures. And so this is a great card just for that, and it makes people think, because people start racing to try to find a way to deal with it. I think with a deck that has as much mana as I do, stopping me from having triple or double mana can be important, but with as much mana that I have, I don't think you're going to slow it down too much. And so this is a good way to eat a removal spell. Somebody that's like that black removal spell that either kills a creature or an enchantment. Well, instead of killing an important creature that's going to be coming out soon, it kills this enchantment and I get to keep the creature. Or they kill the wrong pieces. People have a hard time identifying what the problem is in this deck. Like, a lot of people think AC, Tyrant of the Dire Strait, is the problem of this deck. No, he's not. With the theme of the deck and how I've built the deck to do pretty much the exact same thing as AC does, but on a bunch of other cards, AC is not that important of a piece in this deck. So people like to remove AC a lot because they think you're getting too many lands. Well, it's like, I also have an Azusa in play, you know, kill the Azusa if you don't want me to have lands. But then you're drawing. It's like, all right, I still have other cards that let me draw and play. I've got a Tattooed Benthic Druid in play. Why don't you get rid of her? And it's like, no, your AC's the problem. It's like, it's just ridiculous. People think AC's the problem a lot, and AC just doesn't seem to be the problem. To me, people kill AC, this is what happens. Next turn I play AC in 2 lands. My tax is covered for the next time you kill them already. That's usually what happens when people kill AC. The only time killing AC I can see going well is that if you can kill AC before I play lands with him. And so early game countering him or killing him before I play the lands. Those are the only ways I can see to get an advantage off of killing AC. And even then, it just slows me down by a couple of turns. My gameplay is already based off of a slow gameplay. If I need to spend another turn or two to play AC, it's not that big of a deal, because eventually cards like Virtue of Strength will hit the field, and you've wasted all your removal on AC, and now I've got a bunch of mana, and so yeah, it's just I don't think AC is an important piece to remove, unless you can do it really early game and before I play lands. And then excuse me. Zendikar's Royal. Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a 2/2 green elemental creature token. This is one of the couple of ways in this deck where I can spam out a bunch of creatures from playing a bunch of lands, and being able to play a crap ton of lands a turn with all my land fetch spells, my fetch lands and stuff like that. I'm able to shit out so many green elementals onto the field, and then, like I said, if I have Orin Reef, the Vast Wood, I'm able to make them into 3/3s, which is really important because 3/3s are better than 2/2s. But eventually, this is one of my ways to protect myself in the early game as well, because I'm making a bunch of 2/2s to block. But in the end game, when you're able to play cards like Finale of Devastation or a particular creature, yeah, you're essentially going to turn those 2/2s into huge threats that are going to wipe out your opponents, and then all these creatures you built up become just devastating. And so those are enchantments. Last but not least, we're going to talk about my favorite subject, the creatures, 30 of them. And we're going to start off with a great one called Ancient Green Warden. Ancient Green Warden is a 5/7 with reach, one of my few creatures in the deck with reach to deal with flying. And its other abilities that you may play lands from your graveyard. Huge effect. I already went over how big of a deal, why playing lands from my graveyard is important with Conduit of the Worlds. Now I have it on a creature, Ancient Green Warden. But the bigger thing about Ancient Green Warden, if a land entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Now each land is drawing me 2 cards off of AC and so much more from the rest of my deck. 2 tokens for every Zendikar, for my Zendikar Royal. It's just a huge deal. The quest counters are getting stacked on, so maybe Colony came out late, I can get Colony done in a turn. And so yeah, it's just a huge piece, very important. This is something that I don't want to see go, but since people see it's a 5/7, they think it's not as important as other things. Eryxines, the Slumbering Isle, is a very important card in this deck for a couple of reasons. One, it's technically another land. It's the 36th land, because when it enters the battlefield tapped with 5 slumber counters on it, and then it is a land as long as it has slumber counters in it, so it enters as a land. It taps for 2 green, which is really, really nice. It's a big 12/12 creature to swing with when it's done with. It's just a nice backup to both be a creature and a land, and casting a lot of spells off of all my mana. It makes me get rid of it. It's also a board wipe defense, because half the time it's a land when people board wipe all my creatures, and then I cast a few more spells and I get this big 12/12 creature out afterwards. Next is Augur of Autumn. Augur of Autumn is a nice way for me to keep casting, even though I have a bunch of ways to draw cards. This is a way for me to keep casting even beyond drawing cards. And that's I may look at the top card of my library anytime. I may play lands from the top of my library, so I'm able to get more lands off of AC to Tyrant straight. And then as long as you control 3 or more creatures with different powers, you may cast creature spells from the top of your library as well. And since I have 35 lands and 30 creatures, this is a great way to get rid of 65 cards out of my deck most of the time. Next is Avenger of Zendikar. When Avenger of Zendikar enters the battlefield, create a 0/1 green plant creature token for each land you control. Have we been keeping up with the amount of lands that I'm going to be playing? This is going to come in with an army. And then Landfall, have we been keeping up with the fact that I can keep playing lands over and over again with Simic Growth Chamber and stuff? Whenever a land enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each plant creature you control. Not only did it make an army, but it's going to make an army huge. This is a great card in my deck. I love it. Next is Azusa Lost But Seeking, specifically the secret rare. I am extremely proud of paying $40 for that secret rare, because I made all my money back in this Azusa. But not only that, but she looks so pretty. And yes, I did get the foil one. I know a lot of people are saying don't get foils. Foils crinkle and crap like that. I fully understand that, but I am a goblin through and through, shiny all the way. And so Azusa, huge deal in this deck. You may play 2 additional lands on each of your turns. Freaking huge deal. because playing a land draws a card, play another land, draws a card, drew another land, and so on and so forth. You're allowed to keep going just constantly. If I have Ancient Green Warden into play, I'm drawing out my entire deck with her. Beanstalk Giant, great creature in this deck because his Fertile Footsteps sorcery ability allows me to search out a land, and then later on he can come in as a really huge creature because his power and toughness is equal to the number of lands I control. Again, have you been keeping up with the number of lands that are coming into play in this deck? He's coming out huge. He's one of the cards that I want to make unblockable so that way I can just finish somebody off. Next is Craterhoof Behemoth. Craterhoof Behemoth is one of my game-changing, world-ending creatures. He is the thing that I am most searching for with Finale of Devastation. He has haste. He is a 5/5. When he enters the battlefield, creatures you control gain trample and +X, where X is the number of creatures you control. I've been making creatures with Zendikar's Royal and other cards like that this entire time. I have a good army. I have freaking Avenger of Zendikar out. My plants are now massive monstrosities with trample, and they are going to finish the game. I've just made an army of treants, and they will crush you. Cultivator Colossus. He's another creature with a power and toughness equal to the number of lands control. He's another big creature that's going to be a problem. He has trample on him already, unlike the Beanstalk Giant. Beanstalk Giant should have trample, but he doesn't. But here's another really cool ability of the Cultivator Colossus, which makes him a huge deal in my deck. He used to be the reason why there was a broken combo in my deck, but then we found out he doesn't work the way we think, and so the broken combo went away. I'll explain that in a little bit. When Cultivator Colossus enters the battlefield, you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped. If you do, draw a card and repeat this process. So as long as I got hand in play, I've got 35 lands in my deck, so chance has it I'm going to have land in play whenever I draw a card. I could have a bunch of lands in play just from doing Elia's intervention, searching up a bunch, and then playing a bunch. Drawing a bunch of cards, playing more lands. Chance has it I drew more lands. Then, after that ability is done, for all my other cards that have landfall effects, then they go off. I used to think that all the landfall effects happened at the same time that this creature's lands came into play, but apparently you cannot interrupt this ability. And such. So, if, like, for example, Simic Growth Chamber says when it enters the battlefield, return a land to play, or return a land from play to hand. Well, when I play that with Cultivator Colossus, it stays into play until I'm done using Cultivator Colossus' ability. Then I choose to return a land to return to play, which will be itself usually. Before I thought that I could keep going Simic Growth Chamber, return it, Growth Chamber, return it, Growth Chamber, return it. I thought I could do that, but you can't interrupt the ability, and so that's one of the reasons why I used to have the Jace and the Laboratory Maniac in this deck, is because I thought I could just draw myself out and win. Turns out that is not the case, and so I removed them because after removing that combo, I no longer drew myself out of deck completely anymore, and so it just wasn't viable to keep those two cards in. But yeah, Cultivator Colossus, huge deal. Not only is he making himself huge when he enters the battlefield, he's drawing me a bunch of cards when he enters the battlefield, and then he combos really well with AC and other cards that are in play, allowing me to draw more cards and stuff like that, or make a bunch of creatures. It's insane. Next is Greensleeve's Marl Sorcerer, is another creature with power and toughness equal to the number of lands I control. Has a weird protection from planeswalkers and wizards that has never applied in any of my games ever. There was one game where I was facing off against a bunch of wizards, and I managed to get an attack in because he was playing, I think it was, I forgot what the deck was, but pretty much everything in it was a wizard, and I was able to get free attacks in because of that. But otherwise, it's never played an effect. Greensleeve's Marl Sorcerer's power and toughness equal to the number of lands I control. But more importantly, the bigger thing about this is that it's Zendikar's Royal, in that whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a 3/3 green badger creature token. Really big deal. Big creature, makes tokens, he's a prime target to removal. Chance has it somebody removes him or removes something else and leaves him. Again, I have a bunch of big creatures like Ancient Green Warden, Rick Smithies, Craterhoof Behemoth, Cultivator Colossus, creatures that are extremely scary. I run a lot of them, and so it's hard for people to choose which one's worse than the others. And I'm hoping that people have wasted the removal on my Cultivator Colossus, so that way the Greensleeve's Marl Sorcerer stays in play, or they remove the Avenger of Zendikar so the Greensleeve's Marl Sorcerer in play, or they remove the Greensleeve's Marl Sorcerer so the Ancient Green Warden can stay. I'm just hoping that these creatures are being able to stay around longer than they are, because I'm making hard choices for my opponents. Guardian Augmenter. That should be a card too. Guardian Avenger. Guardian Augmenter. Flash, commander creatures you control get +2/+2, and commander creatures you control have hexproof. One of the few ways I have to not only pump AC, so that way I can get more damage, so that way he turns into a 7, which means he just needs to attack somebody 3 times to kill them, but also give him hexproof. So essentially, Guardian Augmenter is, when I'm playing Guardian Augmenter, I am going, alright, AC is now one of my win cons, I gotta use them. Next is Drell Moani Recluse. Drell Moani Recluse makes a 2/2 green cat every time I draw my second card each turn. So chance has it I'm getting a token every turn because I'm drawing lands and I'm playing lands. But more importantly, like I said, we're drawing a bunch of cards with this deck. I have a crap ton of cards that make it so that way I don't have to discard. I have no maximum hand size. So very important ability on this card is that for 4 and 2 green, until end of turn, creatures you control have base power and toughness XX, where X is the number of cards you have in hand. Essentially, I just turned all my creatures into monstrosities with my big 21 card hand. This has come in a clutch several times to pull off a win by giving my creatures trample and being able to make them big enough to deal with people. Next is Cassetto Orochi Archmage. He's got an ability for a blue and a green to give target creature can't be blocked this turn. If that creature is a snake, it gets +2/+2 to end a turn. Don't care about that ability. Cassetto's the only snake in the deck. But again, he is another ability that gives AC unblockable, allowing me to win with commander damage, or just to make one of my big hitters unblockable and finish somebody off that way. Here comes one of my mill defenses, and that is Kozilek Butcher of Truths. I do plan to put his brother in the deck. I would put his sister in the deck, but his sister is banned. And yes, I refer to Emrakul as a girl. Because only a card that strong can be a bitch. And so Kozilek Butcher of Truths in here specifically, and only, I paid the $40 price. Again, I used my winnings from playing down at the card shop. I saw it there, and I had literally just lost to a mill deck. Somebody had just built a mill deck, and they were a big fan of it. It was a bloody Brutaclad, or not Brutaclad, Bruvac. It was a bloody Bruvac deck, and he milled me way too easily. We were like one turn away from killing him to stop him. The entire table turned on him, and we screwed up, and we couldn't kill him in time. And then, yeah, just because of that day ended, and I went back up to the counter, upset and frustrated, paying for my entry, and there I saw it, Kozilek Butcher of Truth staring at me from inside the case going, "Bitch, you need me for the next one." And I'm like, "Yup, you're right. How much credit do I got? I'm getting him." And so I got Kozilek Butcher of Truth, and whenever you cast a spell, draw 4 cards, really useful ability. Annihilator 4, really powerful ability that makes people think people are going to want to kill Kozilek as much as possible. I'm 100% okay with that. I don't care about Kozilek being in play. I don't want Kozilek in play. If I put Kozilek in play and I actually want him in play, then I'm desperate for a win con scenario because I need that Annihilator 4 most likely. He's a big 12/12. He's in here specifically to stop me from decking out either by myself or by other people trying to mill me. And I want to put his brother in here, Ulamog in here as soon as possible, so that way I have 2 ways to do it. Problem: what do I remove for Ulamog? You guys have seen the deck. It's so good. I don't know what to remove for Ulamog. He's not the only card I want to remove, or I want to add. I want to add... there's a new loot that came out in the most recent set, so if you're watching this way late in the years later, essentially Foundation just came out not too long ago, and loot came out with it that gave extra land drops and the ability to search for creatures. Really big deal. I want him in here, and I think there's another card from that set that I want to get in here too, that's landfall ability. Really important cards that I want to get in here. I don't know what to take out. I literally have no clue. This deck I think is as good as I can get it, but there's so many ways to make it better. What to take out is an insane question for this deck. Next is Krufix, God of Horizons. I got this in a trade, and I thought about it. You know, I thought I was gonna make a deck off of him. I was gonna build a deck off of Krufix. But then I thought deep and hard about it, and I thought to myself, well, no maximum hand size and saves my unspent mana. That could go really well in AC because this allows me to keep up mana for my counterspell and then spend it at the end of every turn before it goes to my turn to get that mana stored up for the next turn, or to just anger people and find some sort of removal for an indestructible. So essentially, the exile removals are going to be used up on this crucifix instead of another more important piece. But at the same time, it's another way for me to get no maximum hand size, which is also very important with this deck. Next is Miliku, the Clouded Mirror, a really cool card for this deck. In that it's not only has it got flying, so it's one of my few ways to block flyers, but it is, there we go, let's do that so that way you can see its power and toughness, 2/4. I can pay 1 to return a land I control to its owner's hand to create a 1/1 blue illusion creature token with flying. Now, the really cool thing about this is that I could end up having one of my cards in play that doubles or triples mana. I could tap a land, get 3 mana, return that land to hand, play that land, and get to tap it again for even more mana. And so this is just a really cool ability to get. For one, I'm getting lands back to hand, which are really important because the more lands I get to get in hand, the more lands I get to play, the more lands I get to play, and the more cards I get to draw. But now I'm creating flying blockers, which is a huge deal. Or, if I end up getting a way to pump my creatures, like with Joral Moani Recluse, I'm able to get a bunch of flyers that I can swing in for win. Next is Multani Yavmaya's Avatar, one of the few cards I have that I can get back very easily because I just need to sacrifice return lands to hand to get him back. Again, I want ways to return lands to hand because I want to be able to play more lands. He gets +1/+1 for each land I control and each land in my graveyard, so he's slightly better than my other big creatures because now all my fetch lands are paying for his ability. And then he's got Reach, so he's got one of my few ways to deal with flyers, and he's got Trample, which means he's also one of my few ways to kill people. Again, he's a really big important piece that hopefully people don't get rid of too often. If worse comes to worse, I pay 2 mana, I return 2 lands, I get them back, and I recast them. Next is another huge piece, and that is the Nyx Bloom Ancient. This is another triple mana, except this one affects all things that produce mana. So that means even my mana rocks are now producing triple mana. All my dual lands and my alt land, or my non-basic lands, are now producing triple mana. And he's also got Trample. He's a 5/5 Trample on himself, so I could be swinging with him. I'm usually not swinging with him. He's too valuable. I like keeping him around. I like keeping that mana around. If it goes away, it goes away. But chance has it ate something, and I get to keep something else. I get to keep the Green Seas Morrow Sorcerer instead of him, and that's pretty important. Next is Rampaging Baloths. Rampaging Baloths, really big important creature. Not only is a 6/6 Trampler, really nice and powerful, but whenever a land enters the battlefield, I'm now making 4/4s. 4/4 beast creature tokens. We have a card to make 2/2s, we have a card to make 3/3s, now we have a card to make 4/4s. We're just getting counting up, we're just getting stronger, and we got ways to make more tokens. The way that this deck shits out lands, I'm making a crap ton of these 4/4s a turn. It's only sad that he's coming out turn 5 or 6 or maybe 4 if I'm lucky. But rarely often 4 does he come out. Next is Ramnat Excavator. I may play lands from my graveyard. I already said how important it is to be able to play lands from your graveyard. Well, here's another way for me to do it. He's one of the few cards that I thought to myself, maybe I can take him out for Ulamog. Because I do like playing lands from my grave, but he only does that, and the other two, they do other things. Next is Rashmi, Eternity's Crafter, another way for me to essentially draw cards and get more abilities whenever I cast my first spell each turn. Reveal the top card of your library. If it's a non-land card with converted mana cost less than that spell, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. If you don't cast the reveal card, put it in your hand. One way, it is essentially another drawn card every time I cast a spell, but at the same time, have you seen how high the mana cost for a lot of my spells are? I'm getting probably a lot of free cards off of this. And I usually do. I get a couple free spells, but most of the time I'm usually drawing lands that I can then play and so on and so forth. It's just drawing more cards. Next is Sakashima the Imposter. Sakashima the Imposter, very great card. Secret Lair, as you saw, I bought that Secret Lair. He's from the same pack as Azusa is from. And that is, you may have Sakashima the Imposter enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield except his name is Sakashima the Imposter. It's legendary in addition to its other type, and it has pay 2 and 2 blue, sorry. Return this creature to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. So, not only is there a way for me to reuse him on different things because he can keep returning back to my hand, but at the same time, he is a huge piece in that I get to cheat again. I get to have 2 of something. I could have 2 Nyx Bloom Ancients, have crap ton of mana, or I could have 2 ACs and be able to draw significantly more cards and play even more lands. or I can just have 2 big heavy hitters to swing with, or I can get a second, maybe someone's been gaining a bunch of life and I hit the Craterhoof Behemoth and I play him to play another Craterhoof Behemoth, and I'm able to finally get a win in. But he's really big and powerful, but he also works with the next card that I'm about to talk about, and that is Scourge of Fleets. This is the reason why I search for more islands than I do forests when I do all my land search, because Scourge of Fleets says, when it enters the battlefield, return each creature your opponents control with toughness X or less to its owner's hand, where X is the number of islands you control. This is the reason why I'm searching out islands all game long, is just because of this one card. I know that's a big change or a big effect to do to your game plan just because of one card, but Scourge of Fleets has made an appearance so many times in so many games. I'm drawing so many cards that I usually get him, and he's one of my win cons, because yeah, there's Cone of Cold to tap everything down, but Scourge of Fleets being able to just bounce everything back is more important to me, because just in case something goes wrong where someone Spore Frogs or does a fog effect in any way to stop me from doing damage, I essentially at least also remove their field for next time, allowing me to, if I didn't win this turn, I'm probably going to win next turn. So it's a big important card, and I love it. And Sakashima the Imposter is a way to do it a second time, and over and over and over again, actually, just in case somebody, making somebody have to kill the Scourge of Fleets afterwards if they want to stop me with Sakashima the Imposter. Next is Scoot Swarm. Scoot Swarm, big important card. We are making 2/2s, we are making 3/3s, we are making 4/4s, and now we are making 1/1s. Whenever a land enters the battlefield in your control, create a 1/1 green insect creature token. Not that bad. If you control 6 or more lands, done by turn 4 or 5. Creature tokens that 6 or more lands, create a token that's a copy of Scoot Swarm instead. So essentially, I am now, every time I play a land, we see how many lands I play. Double. I have this massive army of 1/1s, so big that I can swing in through everybody and just kill everybody with a bunch of 1/1s. Big important card that people need to kill right away. If they don't, they have to use multiple kills to stop it, or a board wipe. They have to play a board wipe. It's a good way for me to force a board wipe early game, because chance has it when I play it, I'm going to end up with 4 of them, because I'm going to play 2 lands off of AC and then and get turn 1 into 2 and 2 into 4. So people are going to have to either use 4 removals, which means the entire table is going to have to work together, and somebody's going to end up having to use 2 removals, or one person's going to have to use a board wipe, and I force a board wipe. Next is a very unique card that I don't see played a lot, but I've used it several times. It doesn't get to see its use a lot because a lot of people do end up identifying it as a problem, but it absorbs a kill spell when it's technically not as problematic as other cards. It just becomes a problem for it's a problem for players, but it's not a problem on my battlefield, if that makes sense. It's not a problem piece that I benefit from. It's a problem piece that upsets my opponents, and that's because he has 1 evolve, which makes it so that way whenever a creature enters the battlefield that has more power or toughness than him, he gets a +1/+1 counter. As you can see, I run a lot of big creatures and a lot of creatures that are insanely big because their power and toughness is equal to my lands. So chance has it he's growing at probably every turn. But I can tap him to remove 1 or more +1/+1 counters from him, to gain control of target creature with power less than or equal to the number of +1/+1 counters I remove. Now, I'm not going to steal anything big with him, but I am going to steal very important pieces on people's boards to stop them from doing what they're doing. And that becomes a huge problem, and that's what makes him end up absorbing a kill spell, because he's too much of a problem for other people. So yeah, really cool card, not used enough, I recommend it. Simic Sky Swallower, Flying, Trample, Shroud. He is one of the cards in here that I've debated saying he could be something I can remove, because he is mostly in here because he was in the default deck when I bought this precon. But at the same time, he's in here because he is a flying creature that cannot be removed easily, allowing me to be able to block flyers. He's a big flyer, he's a 6/6, so he's going to be able to block a lot of stuff. So like, one reason I don't want to remove him, because he's one of my few ways to fly, he's one of my few ways to block flyers. But at the same time, he doesn't do a whole lot. He's just a keyword creature. Next is Slyn Voda the Rising Deep. This is another way for me to board wipe, but this time I get to keep some creatures, but I do lose some creatures because I don't run a bunch of Merfolk, Kraken, Leviathan, Octopuses, and Serpents. I do have AC's a Serpent. I do run the Kraken tokens. He is a Leviathan himself. I do run some a Merfolk. I don't run any Octopuses. And so this is a way for me to do a somewhat selective board wipe to get rid of things off of people's fields. He is a 10 mana board wipe, but he is board wiping blue-green. Next is Spore Mound. Spore Mound is another way to make 1/1s. He is whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 green sapling creature token. Just a way for me to make blockers in the early game. Really big, important to me. But I don't get them out until turn 4 or 5. So again, I'm really weak in the early game. Next is Stormtide Leviathan. Stormtide Leviathan is what I play when the game is not going my way. I play to win. I play to have fun, but I try to win. And so one of the ways that I stop other people from winning, instead of playing a shit ton of counterspells, which are one-time uses that go away, I instead play Stormtide Leviathan, which is a big 8/8 creature with Island Walk that turns all lands into islands, as well as their additional other types. So he's going to get he's a free 8/8 swing on anybody that I want. But he also stops creatures without flying and Island Lock from attacking. So now, again, like I said in Commander, people don't run flyers a whole lot. Well, now they're regretting it even more because they can't get swings in on me, or at least I've now limited the number of swings that can hit me because only flying creatures can hit me. And this allows me to slow it down. I can get the sword onto him and start executing people one by one with Stormtide Leviathan that way. So yeah, he's just a way for me to stall the game out until I can find another win con. As you can see, I'm not afraid to stall the game out. I do agree that games shouldn't be complete slow stalls, but it's not a complete slow stall. The fact that he's going to do 8 damage a turn to somebody, and chance has it I'm drawing so many cards that I'm going to find the sword to put on him that make him even bigger, is that it's not a true stall, and it allows me to remove people slowly one by one, the most problematic first. And so he's a really big important piece in my deck, and it sucks when he goes. Next is Tetoya Benthic Druid, also known as Mini AC. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, gain 1 life, draw a card. So she doesn't get the extra land drop that AC does. A lot of people say I should run her instead because I can get her out a turn earlier, and she gives me life gain, and it's good to have life gain constantly. And I agree, it's good to have life gain. Right now, the only ways I have to gain life in this entire deck is her, the artifact, I've already forgotten its name, the Great Henge, and then all of those fetch lands that immediately sacrifice themselves are all my ways to gain life. And so she's really important to me in the fact that she can gain me life back that I've lost from the early game because I couldn't protect myself in the early game. But she's also a really big deal when I get the cards out that makes it that way. I double landfall triggers or just multiple land drops and stuff like that. She's just really powerful, and she's a really good addition to AC. And I have a soft spot for AC. AC was the default commander of this precon that I bought. I just really like AC. I like the Serpent. Tetoya Benthic Druid is really nice as well. She's a really cool merfolk. She's got life gain, but she doesn't have the additional land drop. And I do like the double cheat over the single cheat. And so yeah, I like AC, and I went with AC. And I'm sticking with AC. And then last but not least on the creature section is probably one of my dirtiest creatures, and that is Vorinclex, Voice of Hunger. Hopefully so many other creatures have ate up kill spells that when he comes out there's no more kill spells left. Or the fact that he's just so devastatingly evil that he eats a kill spell right away, leaving me a lot of other cards to play without problems. And the fact that he is a 7/6 trampler, not that bad. Whenever I tap land for mana, I get to add 1 of any type that land could produce, so he's a mana doubler. But more importantly, and what gets him killed every time, is that whenever an opponent taps a land for mana, that land doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. This does a number of things for my game, because either someone says I can deal with it, and it results in players not doing anything on their next turn, because they're waiting for that player to deal with something, unless that player that deals with it happens to be right after you, in which that sucks. But at the same time, that one player that did deal with it is getting punished, because now the mana that he has to tap to deal with it is getting shut down for at least another turn. And so it's really cool. It shuts people's mana down. It slows people down. Again, I do believe that you shouldn't be slowing games down too much, but chance has it when he's slowing things down, he's making it so that way I can win. because it's stopping people from casting spells that are doing their thing, allowing me to do my thing more. And of course, he's just as at most we've seen 2 cards in my deck that slow things down a lot, and that is Stormtide Leviathan and Vorinclex Voice of Hunger. And this is another card. I have Vorinclex Voice of Hunger in my dinosaur deck, and I thought to myself that he would do well in AC. And then one day I saw him in the glass container at my local shop, and I went, you know what, let's grab him, let's put him in AC, and that's what I did. I put him in AC. So that is AC Tyrant of the Gyre Strait. As you can see from the game plan, it's that the idea is to draw a bunch of cards, play a bunch of lands, play massive creatures, play a bunch of tokens, and to swing all out on a trampling board field, or to sneak in unblockable hits from big creatures or my commander. Those are my win cons. Commander damage, all out damage. I can't mill nobody. I can't win through alternative win cons in any way. But yeah, though it's a straightforward deck. It's pretty easy to use. If you build this, it's a lot of fun. Being able to draw so many extra cards, play so many extra cards, keep a huge hand, keep your opponents having to risk things, having to choose what to destroy when all of it's bad news, is just a lot of fun. And I love this deck. It's blue-green. It's just great. So I hope you guys enjoyed this little deck of mine, and I hope you guys look forward to more of these. I'll be showcasing another one of my decks every time that we have a additional 4th week fifth week, an additional 5th week in every month. Or 5th Wednesday of every month, I'll be doing probably one of my decks. I like to build very interesting things, so I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know that this probably isn't 100% original deck idea, but it is my favorite deck, and I thought I'd share my most favorite deck before my most interesting decks. Because I do play some really wacky shit. Like I said, I play Wooburg, and I play a Wooburg deck that's just Chaos Incarnate. It's got so many options in it, I don't know what to do with it. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I hope you guys look forward to seeing the next one, and I hope you guys look forward to seeing my my next video in general. We're going to be going back to roleplay stuff next month. I hope you guys tune into my streams where I'm playing games. I believe that I'm still playing XCOM, State of Decay. I might have moved off of State of Decay to MechWarriors 5. If I didn't, well, we're still in State of Decay. I hope you enjoy that. If you're looking for MechWarriors 5 gameplay instead of State of Decay, let me know that, and I'll look into adding it after this maybe. And then also DBZ Kakarot, I'm pretty sure we're still playing. So yeah, tune into my streams, watch me play games. Yeah, it's just tune in, say hi, talk about anything, talk about my deck, talk about one of my roleplay mechanics. I'd love to talk about anything I can. It's one of the few times you can catch me live and interact with me live, so go ahead, take advantage of that. Otherwise, I hope you guys enjoy your day, and I hope you have a safe adventure.